This is the culture.
Welcome back to the Cinema Wave podcast. If you guys like this conversation and would like to hear more about us and who we are, please check us out at Cinema Wave Media on Instagram and TikTok, as well as at _Culture Wave Media on Instagram. Also, we just want to give a thank you to everyone who's been listening to and watching our content. Please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our show on YouTube, Spotify, and or Apple Podcasts. And also be sure to share with your friends. I'm one of your hosts, Darian Scalamoni, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host for this episode, Liz Seiko. Liz, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. So today, we are going to be dissecting the series premiere of The Idol, which is the latest show that came out on HBO the other night from Euphoria creator Sam Levinson. But I want to throw to you, Liz, just in general, what did you think overall about the premiere of this highly talked about program?
I don't even know where to start right now with this. I thought it was really bad. I'm just gonna say it. I thought it was really bad. I thought they got this. I don't know where they're going with this storyline. I thought it was super sexualized, too much almost. I'm not against nudity in any way, but I feel like if you're just throwing it out there to shock the audience and it's not really a purpose, what's the point? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But we'll get more into that. What's your first instinct on that?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Sam Levinson. Again, I watch Euphoria. I think we're both watchers of Euphoria.
Yes, yes.
And this was one that, when it was first announced, I was interested, especially because of the Weeknd's involvement, in general. I'm a big fan, if the people at home don't know this, Uncut Gems is one of my favorite movies. He has a very, very small role in it. Mm-hmm. But I thought he was okay in the small role that he was in, and I was like, okay, he also has a really, really deep love and appreciation of cinema. All of his music videos are very movie related, and he's created all these great short films that he's done for his music and
he's
things
great
like
with
that.
Storylines. Even in his persona kind of The Weeknd, when he was getting ready to do, I think it was the Super Bowl or something like that, he created this whole story for this Instagram to he's just a storyteller. So I had high expectations too.
Yeah, I think that just in general though, overall, I agree with you in terms of there were
it's where do we start?
Yeah, it's all right, let's just dive right in. There's a lot of imagery excuse me, there's a lot of imagery in Euphoria that can be disturbing, and I had thought that from the beginning, even the first season, which I think is a better season than the second.
But that's why people loved Euphoria, because it was kind of whoa, where did this guy Sam come from?
It was very in your face.
Yeah.
And so for the people that don't know, Sam Levinson is the son of the director Barry Levinson. He's done a bunch of movies, but Sam did Euphoria, then he did this movie on Netflix called Malcolm and Marie with John David Washington and Zendaya, and now he's doing The Idol. But the thing is, which we'll dive deeper on I think a little bit, but The Idol originally was supposed to be executive produced by him, and he was one of the co-creators of the show.
Yes.
But he was not supposed to direct the whole thing, and a big article came out back in March at Rolling Stone that Sam took over directing after 80% of the project was scrapped. And I don't want to mess up the name here, so let me just refer to my notes for a second. It was a female director. Amy Seimetz was the one who was attached originally to it, and they got 80% of the project done before, and I think it was mostly a factor between both The Weeknd and Sam Levinson that they completely scrapped what the show was already in a very expensive 6-episode first season, where it already cost the studio I think around $80 million.
Well, so it's interesting because it's here they did 80%. From the Rolling Stones article, it says that Amy suddenly exited with roughly 80% of 6-episode series finished. So it's what was the reason for her walking away at 80% being done? But then I guess it goes on to say that there was very little explanation for the shakeup, but that there were reports that The Weeknd, who is a co-creator, felt the show was heading too much into a female perspective.
Yeah, which is very interesting because, at least I think I could speak to in the premiere, it seems that it's the exact opposite in the premiere. It seems like it's very much in the male gaze, especially with his character.
Well, I'm also like, what? Too much female perspective. It's a female pop star.
Yeah, as
like,
the lead of the
as
show.
the lead of the show. So why aren't we trying to have a female perspective? Because it's like, well then, what? Yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, again, they don't say who the person is that's coming out and saying all of this too in the Rolling Stones. They just, I think they refer.
I think it's
to
multiple
it as
crew members that had spoken on it and cast
members.
But the one thing, so I guess let's start from the beginning and just explain what the show is. So the show is a show about this girl named Jocelyn who's very reminiscent, and they even make light of it in terms of like the writing of the show. She's like a Britney Spears of the modern era. Like, she's this rising pop star, and she's very like she's huge. And the thing is that she has a bunch of handlers. Or that's the only way we can refer to them at this point, because you don't really find
one
out
of them said
what
that
every
they're
role
a
is.
manager. I think somebody said I'm PR, but it's just a group of people that are, you're right, handling her life. And that's where we start, is seeing them all in her house, trying to prepare her, and they insinuate that she just went through kind of like a mental breakdown almost, and that they're trying to get her back into the public eye, getting her to bring out a new single, preparing her to do performances, and it's kind of just this aura of them pushing her in this scene to do more.
Exactly, and you see her reach her limits in scenes like that, and you have a Vanity Fair reporter come in to have a sit-down interview with her and talk about her experiences with her mother.
Which I thought was interesting.
And drugs.
So do you think that they asked Vanity Fair if they could say their like actual name in the show, or do you think they just said it? I
think you're allowed to, because it's like...
Do you? Because they also said Live Nation, which I was a little surprised, because I feel like Live Nation is a little bit more like geared to younger generations, and so for them to name drop Live Nation,
maybe there's licensing fees. The show is also, this is the most interesting thing to me, because I think we're both fans of this company, but the show is produced by A24.
I know.
Which is, and they also produced Euphoria. I don't know if they produced Malcolm and Marie, but Euphoria is a massive success. Like, regardless of what your thoughts are on the show in general, it's a massive success for the network. It's made stars out of a lot of people on the show. Jacob Elordi, Angus Cloud, Sydney Sweeney. All these people that have come out of nowhere because of the show. And The Idol tries to make a star out of Lily Rose Depp, who is the daughter of Johnny Depp. And she's been an actress even before the show came out.
Yep.
But again, this is the big kind of coming out party for The Weeknd, who, even in the show, he goes by his real name, which is Abel Tesfaye, which is an interesting departure, because he has this name that's very synonymous, and I don't know if it's something that he's trying to do to kind of differentiate.
It's cringy. I think it's cringy. I just feel like he's, in a way, it makes it seem like, okay, are you playing yourself? Is that what you're envisioning? Like, yourself in this role?
Well, his role in general, too, in the show is one that's very, like you said, it's very cringy.
Yeah.
And it's something that... it's interesting to note that if this is something that he completely changed, if that's true, again, these are allegations, we're not sure exactly what happened, we weren't on set, but it's an interesting perspective that if that is the case, it seems like this is so much more of a passion project for him, and just getting people to participate in what his fantasy is, versus creating a show that is inclusive and inviting to everybody that's there, and making the most of it. Because the show in general, again, I feel that every single scene seems really strenuous. Like, on the viewer, every scene is kind of hard to get through. And part of the reason, it's hard for us to talk about the story of the show is because there's so much of the story that seems like it was plucked from what the original scripts may have been, which, again, a lot of the people in that Rolling Stone article talk about, they signed up for this show that was supposed to be a satire on, Hollywood and the way that people acted,
and producers and that whole world.
Exactly.
And I just feel like they got stuck. I just feel like they got stuck in the sexuality and nudity of the show, and they can't look past that for some reason.
Exactly. And I do think it was a creative intention by both The Weeknd and, again, so Sam Levinson coming on, didn't intend to direct the show, comes on, directs every episode now for the whole season, which there were reports even on episodes of Euphoria. I don't remember if it was both season 1 and season 2 or one of them the other one, but he's very, he can't make up his mind a lot of the times. They do a lot of reshoots. That's why there was a lot of time in between season 1 and season 2, because I think there were commitments by some of the stars, and then when they finally got around to filming, there were so many things that were changed. And again, I think some of the swings that he takes in Euphoria are better handled because I think that the acting is also just better in general in that show. Like I said, besides the actors that have kind of like made their name because of the show, like Zendaya is an established great actress.
Yeah,
we know that.
Yeah, she's multiple Emmy wins.
I think Hunter Schafer's great on the show. And I'm trying to think of his name right now. The one that plays her sponsor. You know what I'm talking about in Euphoria?
Oh, yes.
Bear with us, everybody. I can't find it off the top of my head. But, so just the acting in general on the show, I think, is much better. So when it comes to The Idol, when you already have a lack of a story because of the writing, and then the acting isn't up to par, like, that's hard. I feel like the people that were generating at least the most eyeballs for me were her handlers. Like,
yeah, I agree. So I'll be honest, after watching this first episode, I don't really know if I was somebody that wasn't involved in like, oh, I want to watch everything, because I do end up watching everything, even if I hate it, I will watch everything. I feel like somebody who is just at the normal level TV watcher will not go back for episode 2. Based off this first episode.
No, I don't
think there was enough storyline for them to get invested in any of the characters. The only character that I actually felt any interest in or empathy for was her best friend / assistant.
Oh, Rachel Sennett, yeah.
Yes, that was the only character that I was like, okay, she has something going on that I'd actually be interested in seeing where this character develops. Because they didn't show all her cards in episode 1. I think they showed way too many cards for Jocelyn. They showed her... I just felt like they were showing us way too much in episode 1. And so, like, Rachel's character, you don't know where she's going to go. Is she all of a sudden going to get swallowed up by this industry of people that are kind of, like, money, power hungry, fame hungry? Or she still has that, like, little bit of innocence and... a little bit more naive, so it's like, is she eventually gonna like help Jocelyn get out of this situation? Will she be able to see like, no, don't go down this route, like focus on your music? And so I feel like that character is the only outlet that they have if they can focus on that one.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see her relationship as well with Jocelyn, because they've been like, she's like, it's my best friend, but they don't necessarily act like best friends. Again, she is also her assistant. But it's a situation where just the show in general, it lacks a real vision. And I think it was a creative intention, again, when they reworked the show to have it this way, but I just don't know if it's really working. I think it's a reworked creative intention that was not what a lot of people signed up for, and I think that's why it feels so disconnected. And I think even more on top of that, you're in a situation where you're introducing so many characters at once.
It's overwhelming.
It is.
And then on top of it, you have a very shocking first episode. There was just a lot of risque stuff going on. So you kind of just need to go a little bit slower. I felt they introduced the relationship between the Weeknd's character and Lily Rose way too soon. That should have almost been like end of episode 1 and the last possible second of them catching eyes, so that you can be like, ooh, where is this going next episode? But instead, it was about 20 minutes in, and then all of a sudden they see each other in a club, and the next thing you know, they're in a hallway making out with each other. But this girl is supposed to be a famous pop star, but she's in the back hallway of like a club making out with some guy. Like, she would have bodyguards. I just feel like it's all over the place, and their main focus is shocking the audience. But like, there's so many other shows that are doing that in more creative ways.
Yeah, I think that, again, they're not very subtle in the way they try to be provocative.
Yeah.
And The Weeknd's talked about in interviews too in the reception that they've gotten from the show. It's like they're trying to be provocative, and he was like, when I first released my music, people had these kinds of thoughts too. But again, I think that they're two different mediums, right? So again, what this show is it's very visual, and television in general and film is very visual. But this show is so over the top and in your face that there are moments where not only that you feel uncomfortable, but because the lack of understanding you have for these characters, it makes it even more harder to swallow. So again, going back to what you were just talking about in terms of just like how quickly they rush their relationship.
So fast.
The end of the episode, we see this really, really like over the top weird moment between the two of them.
It was way too much.
It's a lot.
For episode 1, I felt like it was way too much.
And it's crazy because I think that some of the things that I read online, like again, a lot of the words that I'm hearing is provocative. That's the word that a lot of people are using for the show. But some people are like, yeah, you know, like I don't know, I was expecting a lot more based on the reception it was getting. And yes, there's some nudity in the show. There's definitely more in like the first few episodes of Euphoria, I feel like. But I think that in a 6-episode series, for this to be the premiere, they like totally dropped the ball. Like
yes.
I think that, and again, going back to what you were saying before, I don't think a lot of casual viewers will come back to watch the show, but I do think because it's going to be part of the cultural conversation, I think that it will lead people to just be like, well, it's only 6 episodes. Let me see what they're going to do about this.
6 episodes, actually. That surprises me. Because I was going to say, a part of me wishes that they put out 2 episodes last night so that you could see a little bit more progression of the story. Because I don't see how they're going to make a whole season out of this storyline right now because they just put way too much into episode 1. I don't even think they'll be able to go on to a season 2. There's just not enough meat, in my opinion, for them to elongate this relationship.
Well, the other interesting thing I thought that I read online as well was that apparently the Weeknd character is like a cult leader.
Yes.
Which
yeah.
I don't think there's any like indication of that when you're watching the show. Like there's nothing that gives you any indication of that. I mean, his character, again, they have that one line where Rachel Sennett's character says that she feels that he's a bit rapey. And then Lily Rose Depp is
Which made me want to just...
It just makes you feel queasy, and it's also, like, not only that, but it's just, like, it's lazy writing, and it's over the top of, like, Lily Rose then being like, yeah, well, like, I kind of like that about him. Like, so what are you rooting for in this character? What are you rooting for in their relationship? Like, but and also, I understand the show is dark,
we're
but,
at the point in, like, society and the world of, like, when we put something out for people to view, you should be aware of what people are... how people are going to respond and how younger generations are what they're gonna take from this storyline. And by putting that scene out there of being like, oh, he's rapey, I kind of like it. Like, what are we doing right now, HBO? Like, why are we approving that and letting people just put that out for the world to see? But I mean, some people, I saw some people like the show. Some people think that it's very Euphoria-esque. But I think that it's very male fantasy, and I don't know why we're putting that out today.
I agree. I think that, again, it's, like, way more style over substance, and I don't know if there's anything, like, in my personal opinion, I don't know what they would even be able to do in order for me to be a fan of the show by the end of season 1. Is there something that you could think of that you think could salvage the show?
So, this is where I'm torn, because going into this show... I want to hear what you think too. Going into the show, I thought that they were going to go more at an angle of subtly commenting on the music industry and how the managers and handlers pretend to be your friend, but then under the surface, they can be very, they can just use people. And I thought then, ooh, like that's an interesting contrast with like, this man being in a cult. Like, are they trying to compare the music industry to being in a cult? Like, what is this comparison? And so a part of me thinks that if they can just like pump the brakes with trying to shock us and get back down to just a core story, maybe, but I just don't know what the storyline is going to be. Like, is it going to be, I honestly, in a way, I feel like this is just like 50 Shades of Grayish, where it's like they're just going to go off and have all these random sex scenes, and then eventually she'll get brought into a cult. And I just don't see how the production and like music industry is correlating at all.
I think it's interesting that you brought that up, because I feel like what you just described is what probably was the pitch and got so many people to sign on to what the show is supposed to be. I think that creatively the reins have just like, it's like riding a horse and just letting go of the reins. Like just letting the horse go wild.
Let's see where this goes and not going to stop it.
Exactly.
It almost felt like one big music video.
Well, I was going to say, I think in terms of what you were saying too, in the way that the handlers and the people that work with Jocelyn's character, like, that would be an interesting storyline. But even those characters who are played by, again, I think Divine Joy Randolph does a really good job. Hank Azaria, who I'm a fan of. I actually I love Dan Levy. I know we're both Schitt's Creek fans, and I loved him in it. But the thing is, like, these characters are not very shadowy. They're not nuanced. The whole entire show is in your face.
Yes.
And it's hard to establish, again, like, relationships. And we're coming off of a high for HBO with shows like Succession. And again, like...
An incredible show,
yeah,
by the way.
Which, again, just one of the best done final seasons ever. And again, we're comparing a 4-season show to a premiere. But the problem is... you have to be able to hook your viewer on these characters, especially in the very beginning. And it's like, okay, well, if you can't get behind the characters right away, you at least need to have a story that people are interested in. Mm-hmm. This show doesn't do either one. So I have a test always, no matter what. I will watch 3 episodes of any show that I start and then go from there. So I will watch for the next couple weeks. Yeah. I'll see where we end up. And that is half of the season now, understanding that it's 6 episodes.
Then that's the thing. Then it's like, okay, well, let me just see how this goes and like what the ending's going to be. A part of me also thinks it's almost too similar to Euphoria in the filming, and like photography aspects. I wish he would have gone a completely different way. Like, it's very different colored lights, short edits, very fast-paced camera work, which reminds me of Euphoria. And so I just feel like he had such a success with Euphoria and was like, ooh, I'm gonna stick with this idea that I created, but do it under a different like category almost. Instead of high school, I'm gonna graduate and go to
and put it
Hollywood,
in the music
industry.
Exactly. I think that that's very evident in the premiere, that you can see that this guy only has one style of filmmaking that he likes. And the thing is, like, again, we champion certain filmmakers when they have their style, like Quentin Tarantino, that have their very distinct style, and David Fincher and things like that. And I mean, listen, Sam Levinson, he's a young, up-and-coming director. Don't mean to completely shit on what he's doing.
No, I think he's brilliant. I think his, like, photography skills are incredible. He has a clear vision. I think he lacks a little bit in storytelling, though. At the end of the day.
See, I would push. I think sometimes storytelling is interesting enough, but I think he's very erratic, and I think he's a bad director. I don't know if he really knows how to direct his actors, and I think it's evident because there are times, especially in this show, I would say Euphoria, you see it more in season 2, but there are times where it feels like some of these actors are in different shows completely. Like, they're playing their characters, but different versions of these characters. And again, it really depends on... I would love to read the scripts of the first version of the show, because I do think that there is an aspect of this where you can come out and be like, this is actually something that they could have done in a successful way, and having a female perspective and a female director on board with a female lead, I thought would have at least been able to make it more nuanced and follow a story. And there's a reason she signed on, right? So I'd be very interested to see what that first 80%
I want to see that 80%. I do. I hope go through the first 6 episodes. Let us see season 1 of The Idol, but then put those episodes out because I want to compare. Because I do think I wanted to say something. I think actually, what was I just about to say? I don't remember.
Okay.
So keep going.
No, so what I was gonna touch upon for a second was, again, so the expose that came out in March on Rolling Stone, one of the words that detailed the production was it went wildly and disgustingly off the rails. And I feel like even in terms of the show and the way that it is projected to the audience, it feels very, like, again, it doesn't feel like they have a clear hold on what the show wants to be. And I think that's going to be, like, what holds the show back in general. It did decent with ratings. I think it had a little bit under 1 million viewers for the first episode.
Okay.
And HBO has this, especially recently, has this string of, like, shows growing over time. It's their trend recently. We put out a reel that Zach had talked about today, where we were talking about this crazy run that HBO is on. I mean, we had House of the Dragon, this is not in order, but House of the Dragon, Last of Us, Succession, The White Lotus, Love and Death is a new show that just came out with Elizabeth Olsen and Jesse Plemons that has gotten great reviews. This is a show that is, again, going to be very much of the cultural moment, especially to fill that, like, Euphoria-sized hole in a lot of people's hearts. I just don't know if I'd be along for the ride if we weren't in this industry. If we weren't people that wanted to talk about film and television and this wasn't such a hot topic, I am not a fan. I was not a fan of the premiere, and it seemed like just a huge shit show. And I don't know how it's going to be able to pull me back in. Again, I'm going to give it 3 episodes because that's the
Yeah.
commitment I make to myself when I watch a show. But I mean, for them to have this $75-80 million project that you just completely rework, and it just puts you at a position where as a viewer, you don't know what you're even watching, but what you are watching makes you feel uncomfortable. It's kind of hard to come back from that.
Yeah, it makes you uncomfortable without actually having the piece comment on anything. You know, it just kind of makes you uncomfortable to make you uncomfortable, which I get, but I just feel like for a primetime television spot, it's not the right type. But I also think when it comes to shows, there's like 2 things that drive a great television show. It's either the characters or it's the story. And I feel like right now the characters, they barely did any character development. Like they dropped little hints, something about her mom, that she recently had like a mental breakdown, but like you have no empathy for her right now. You don't have any connection, which also it's already hard as like an audience to connect to a super well-known pop star because it's a world that not many people today have any relation to already. So it's like, okay, how do I relate to her? But then on top of it, there's no real story yet. Although they say that it's a love story, but I just didn't feel any connection between her and the Weeknd either. I don't know about you.
No, I
didn't
either.
When they first locked eyes in that club, I was like, wait, what? I was like, why are we already here right now? I was like, I haven't even like sat down and like gotten comfortable and I'm like and invested yet. And yet here we are already seeing like the star-crossed lovers meeting. I was like, what is going on?
Well, not only that, but the introduction to the Weeknd's character is just him yelling on a microphone in the middle of a club because he owns the club and just being like, I got shots for everybody, just like fucking take them. And it's like, all right, dude, like we get it, but at the same time, like we don't understand anything about your character. What makes you so appealing to her character? I mean, it's obvious based on how in your face it is that she's a damaged character, right?
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know exactly why that is. They kind of skirt around it. And again, I think that plays into the point that we were talking about a little earlier where it feels like there were so many plot details that were just completely ripped away from the show when it was reworked. And I think that the biggest problem going forward is we don't know, again, like I keep saying the same point, but it's really hard to understand what is going on because we don't know anything about the characters, we don't know anything about the story, and it's very in your face and it's gross, and we're having these sexualized, like, again, the lines of dialogue we talked about before. They talk about how she has to sell tickets for 14-year-olds, and then the final move she's doing in her choreographed dances, one of her dancers like covering up her crotch with 4 fingers. Like how can you and the other problem with that is, like, again, Euphoria. Now again, we watch Euphoria, but there are high schoolers that watch Euphoria. That's always been like an issue in the tabloids, and that's something that people have talked about. If people are fans of Euphoria and then they see on these coming attractions from the minds of Euphoria, that's another thing where, again, if this is making us feel uncomfortable and we're in our like mid to late 20s, and then we have teenagers that are watching the show, like, I don't know. It's just, the whole thing to me seems gross. I'm not a fan of pretty much everything that I saw. Like I said, the only saving graces for me would be the supporting performances so far from Dan Levy, Hank Azaria, Divine Joy Randolph. Like, they were the standouts to me. I know we talked about a lot of negative because this is how we feel, but like, is there anything that at least kept you interested enough or something that you would like to see more of? I know you brought up Rachel Sennett's character, but
yeah, so her character is really the only one that I'm actually invested in her character. I hope that they start flipping the script a little bit and maybe start... Okay, so it's like when you have these horrible characters, kind of like Succession, like you have these horrible people, but somehow you start to love them. And it's because the writers need to not take them so seriously. Like, don't make it so serious and start showing us, like, yeah, these are fucked up people, and like, we're not trying to get you to like them, but like, see how they keep fucking up their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And kind of go back to, I think in Rolling Stones they say they're like, originally the script was supposed to be a little bit of satire. So it's like, okay, bring that satire in, like, show us like, okay, these are huge pop stars, but really they don't know what they're doing with their lives and like are making horrible decisions just like everybody else in the world. And like, don't put so much pressure on it, but I just don't know if they're going to do that.
I'm not sure either. I think that
like laugh at yourself a little bit. Like
yeah.
make it not so picture perfect. Show us the messy lifestyle. Like I'd be much more interested in seeing like how a pop star goes on stage from wearing practically nothing to then being like fully covered up in sweatpants because that's actually how she dresses at home. Like that's what I want to see. I don't want to see the girl that's like going to sleep fully naked, and it's like, who really does that like all the time? Who is like that all day long? Like no way all these pop stars are. But I don't know. It's I don't know.
Yeah, I think that in general, just overall, I think we both have a lot of concerns for the show. I think that it was something that, again, I don't know if we were highly anticipating, but again, it was very much in the news and entertainment and just anticipating this show.
I do have a thought.
Go ahead.
This kind of for me, okay, so sometimes I feel like shows and like films that have a lot of bad press to begin with, maybe they hype up that press because they don't know how well it's going to be received by the audience.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yes.
Do you have any other shows that you think that this is happening?
Oh my god, I'm forgetting the name. What was the Olivia Wilde movie?
Oh, Don't Worry, Darling.
Yes, that had horrible press before it came out. And then it kind of flopped a little bit compared to what everybody thought it was going to do.
Well, I think in terms of critically it did. I think it made a good amount of money, but I think, again, that's because people come out in droves for Harry Styles. I think that was a big part of it.
But I also think like people see all these news articles and start reading things, and then you almost get your own opinion first. Because I don't know about you, but I went into this kind of expecting to be like on edge and a little bit more like uncomfortable. Just because
in a tense way rather than like an uncomfortability based on
I
what
wasn't
you were
going
seeing.
in being like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have like a casual like Sunday, like, oh, let's all sit down with the family and watch. Like I kind of knew that I was going into something that was a little bit risque, but after seeing like some of the critic reviews that came out, I was like, ooh, I don't know if this is actually going to be good.
So this show is getting killed critically,
ruined.
Obviously. I mean, IMDb is formulated by fans, but a 5 out of 10 on IMDb. I didn't see what it's at for Rotten Tomatoes, but I know it's in the lower category. But to me, it just feels like part of it is trying to be empowering in a weird way, but it completely misses the mark on that. And I think it's masquerading as this thing that it's trying to be very overtly aware of what the industry is, but it's not doing it in a formulated way for the viewer to even think it's as nuanced as it's trying to be.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, again, this is coming from a place where these two... I mean, again, I love The Weeknd's music. I can only talk about him from a creative perspective in terms of television, but I think that it's just something that he completely became egotistical about and thought that it was something that he thought that he just had a handle on. And he has these other projects coming out. I know he's doing a film with Trey Edward Schultz, who did Waves, which is like one of your favorite movies in the last few years.
Another plug, go watch Waves if you've never seen it.
And he's doing that with Barry Keoghan and Jenna Ortega. So, like, that's another, like, to me, that's an even better cast than what we have here. But, like, now I'm not as excited for that kind of project because based on what I'm seeing with this, it's like, I don't know if creatively he's the type of person I want because, again, him and Sam Levinson together, to me, just seem like this erratic pair that just has these big ideas and this, like, overtly male gaze that,
when it comes to actually, like, doing the work, it kind of, you have to get down to the core idea and, like, okay, how does this correlate to what we want to come off across? And I feel like they are just like, oh, let's do this, and this. And, like, then they go and be like, but how do they all connect? Even though we want all these different ideas. Also, I don't know about you, but his acting for me, I was cringing because it was so cheesy.
Well, that was the other thing. I would have loved to have seen, like, if this is something that he really felt like he had to tell this story, right? Which I don't understand why anyone would want to tell this story. But if he felt so, like, empowered to do something like that, why not try to cast somebody that can do a better job of portraying that? Again, it seems like he's just becoming a caricature. Like, he's not a caricature of himself, you would hope.
No, but, I hope not. But, like, it's almost laughable. It's bordering laughable because, like the scene of him when her gate to her home opens and he's standing there in like a black silhouette.
It's like it's like weird.
It's
so
weird.
Have you ever seen
it's like Batman-y, but like a joking, like a comedic Batman.
Have you ever seen it's a comedy from a long time ago. Have you ever seen Grandma's Boy?
No, I haven't.
Alright, so there's a character in that film that is like a tech guy, and he like dresses like he's in the Matrix, and he wears like these dark sunglasses and this big trench coat. And as soon as she answered the door for him, that is exactly what I saw.
That's the vibe.
And I was
so
like,
cringy.
dude, this is a guy that not only is he like, The Weeknd's a cool dude, but like, he's mega talented, and it's like he's putting himself out there, which, again, if he's trying to be vulnerable, good for him. I don't necessarily see it that way, and that's the reason why I think it comes off like laughable, because I just don't think it works.
But then like lean into that. Like, okay, so the scene of after he's at her house and he's like saying like, hi angel, like multiple ways
into
the mirror.
Yeah.
That shit is so funny to see, like a LA club guy like low-key being insecure of how he's gonna say like hi angel to a girl. And it's like, okay, lean into that comedy aspect. And like,
but that's the thing, I don't think he wants to play it insecure.
I think they're taking it so serious and almost trying to make it like horror creepy and like very predatorial. And I don't think that is the tone that they should have gone at all. I think they should have gone a little bit more clever and a little bit more like just not on the nose. I feel like they keep trying to make it creepy and sexy and like on just, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
I think again,
the tone's not working.
I think that again, they went for this idea based on the quotes that they wanted this dark satire, and then they kind of satirized themselves, and now it's just kind of become laughable. But
or part of me thinks they made like the trailer first, and they were like, "Ooh, this trailer's so good. Now let's go make a TV show based on it."
Well, again, that would fit your theory of it feeling like a music video.
It does. It feels like a music video the whole first episode, and then they have like, I think there's only one scene where it's not fast camera movement, and it's the scene between Jocelyn and her assistant when they're like sitting down and watching the show, and that's the only moment that she actually has a vulnerable second of saying like, I just don't want to be made fun of when I put this single out. And it's like, wow, like that's what I want to see, like the insecurity that comes with being a pop star. I don't want to see her walking around like gorgeous and like dancing in like a thong. Like, show me like the real shit that everybody feels day to day.
Well, again, it's giving the viewer a moment to breathe too, right?
Yes,
so
because you needed it.
I want to go back to really quick, just because again, it was a project that The Weeknd was a part of, but like something like Uncut Gems, which directed by the Safdie brothers, they create this moment. Well, they create moments in their films where, and Good Time does this as well, where they're being obvious with their editing and their camera work and all that stuff in order to make it feel tense. But there's so much that is projecting the story forward, or progressing, the story forward, that it works really well with their style. Like, it makes you feel anxious and it makes you feel on the edge of your seat, and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen to these characters. I feel worried for these characters. You don't feel that in this sort of thing because of the way that, again, there's a lack of story, there's a lack of character development. So, again, if they decide to keep this sort of style in terms of the way that the show is presented, the only way I think it's going to wind up working to at least flip my perspective on the show is, again, to add those story beats, make sure that the characters have a little bit more nuance to them, make them feel like I should care about them, because right now, I don't give a shit about any of them. And I'd be totally fine if I never watched another episode of this show, but again, for content reasons, I will watch at least 2 more, and we'll definitely talk about it a little more.
Which is also why I said before, I kind of wish they had put 2 episodes out so that we could see, like, okay, is this just going to be every episode, or are we eventually going to get more? But if they only have 6 episodes, they really can't put 2 out at once.
Yeah. Should we talk about this next week? Should we move on to the Idol episode 2?
Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Well, would you recommend it to somebody based off this episode? Maybe it'll change next episode, but would you tell somebody to watch it?
The easy, simple answer is no. I wouldn't recommend the show to anybody. I think that, again, like, Euphoria was a show that I didn't watch the first season when it was on. Like, I went back and watched it because of the reception of it. But again, I think there's so much to that show. By the way, Coleman Domingo is the name I was thinking of before. He plays her sponsor.
That just came to you.
He's great. No, I looked it up before, but I had to get it out there because he's amazing. Watch everything he's ever done. But in terms of like a show like that, there's more to it that keeps me watching week by week, and there's enough with the cliffhangers and the story that I'm invested in it, even though I wasn't a huge fan of season 2, where I'm still going to watch Euphoria season 3 if and when that happens. This show is something that I cannot get behind, and I cannot recommend it. So those are my final thoughts on it.
I will say one positive about this show.
Okay, Liz is going to wrap us up with something positive about The Idol.
Thing. The opening sequence of Lily Rose Depp, where it's that close-up. If you don't really want to watch this show, I don't really recommend you watch it right now. Let us watch episode 2, and then we'll tell you to watch it. But watch the first, 5 minutes of the episode. I think that is a beautiful opening of showing how much these people in the industry are just performers at the end of the day, and they bring that performing into their lives and into their homes, and they can just flip on a dime. And I thought she did a beautiful job in that first opening sequence of showing the chaoticness that goes in of being a pop star. I
think she's very talented, and I'm excited to at least hopefully see if something else happens with her.
I thought the opening was beautiful, so.
Okay. So we'll go off of that.
Turn it off after.
All right, guys. So again, that is us talking about the first episode and the series premiere of The Idol on HBO. Again, you guys can watch it right now on Max. Right now, I wouldn't say that we recommend it, but again, we're going to watch a couple more episodes. We'll get back to you guys. Signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
I am Liz Sago.
And thank you guys for watching.